if I don't get myself out of this situation, I'm going to end up dead on the street in a gutter somewhere. So I thought the only way I can get out of this situation is to go back home, go to Australia. So I packed up all my stuff, shipped it to go back home. I booked my ticket. And strangely enough, only a week before I was about to leave, I was in a nightclub with a group of friends. And I met someone. I met a man who was a very nice man, and I didn't know it at the time, but he actually ended up becoming my husband, and we're still married today after 35 years.
3 things you will learn in this episode: how a traumatic assault can send someone down a dangerous spiral, why storytelling is so much more than sharing your story, and the surprising reason creativity and human connection are your greatest tools for moving through difficult times. What happens when you bring together nearly 20 years of research, a gift for storytelling, and a creative force reimagining what it means to age well? You get Dr. Xanthe Golenko.
Hi, Xanthe. How are you? I'm so glad you are here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So glad you could join us. And so I've already told everybody about you. So I'm going to kick this back to you and let you tell them a little bit about who you are and what you've gone through in your life. And yeah, we'll just have a little conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah.
So I actually thought today I might share a bit of a story of something that I experienced when I was in my late 20s. It's a very personal story, and it's a story that I haven't really shared with many people. So I guess if people that know me are listening to this, they may be a little bit surprised. But anyway, it's just something that keeps popping up in my mind lately. So here we go. As I said, I was in my late 20s, or actually, no, my early 20s. And at the time, I was actually working as a dancer in Paris in a very famous cabaret show called the Lido de Paris. It's very similar to the Moulin Rouge, but it's actually on the Champs-Elysees. So I'd been working there for about 3 years. And from Australia, I moved there when I was 18. And so one evening, just as usual, I was on my way to work about 7:30 in the evening on a bus, hopped on my normal bus, and it was pretty crowded up near the front. So I made my way towards the back where there was a bit more space and I saw a seat available. I headed for that seat. And as I got closer, I could see that there was a whole group of kind of young guys sitting towards the back of the bus, and this seat was right in the middle of them. And at first I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go and sit there. But then I thought, you know what? Like, I had the right to go and sit in an empty seat on a bus. So I went and sat there. And I noticed like the mood started to shift a bit around them. The guys were looking at me and talking in French and laughing, and I was a bit uncomfortable, but just stayed sitting there anyway. I only had a few stops to go. And then they started flicking my hair, touching my shoulder, tugging on my clothes and my bag. And I was pushing their hands away and saying, stop it and everything. And I guess they would have noticed my accent as well. Anyway, they kept going, and I kept pushing them away, and it was coming up to my stop. So I was literally about to stand up to get off. And then all of a sudden they all stood up. There was about 5 or 6 of them. And as they went past me, they all swung punches straight into my face. I would just remember seeing a fist coming towards me with a big silver ring. And then I remember hearing people gasping around me, but nobody came to help me. When the guys went past me, they just ran off the bus and kind of ran down the street. I managed to get myself to my feet and stagger off the bus. And eventually a guy came up and said, did I need some help? And At the time, we didn't have mobile phones. So I said, I need to call my boyfriend to come pick me up. And so he gave me his telephone card. They had cards at that time that you put in a telephone cabin. And there was a cabin right there. So I was able to call my boyfriend and he came and picked me up and took me to the hospital. So that was pretty shocking. It took me a while to get over, I guess, the healing of the physical wounds. Within a couple of weeks, the bruising had gone down and the cuts had closed over and things like that. But it was really the psychological trauma of something like that happening. And it wasn't really something I talked about a lot with other people or saw a therapist or anything about, just got on with my life. But what I didn't realize was that it was really eating away at me inside. And I don't know why, but for some reason, my response to that experience was I felt like I needed to understand. I felt like I was targeted for a reason. I know a lot of people say it's not your fault and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I felt that I was targeted and I needed to understand why that happened to me. And so my way of doing that, which, in hindsight was not the best way, I decided to actually seek out guys that reminded me or resembled the people, the guys that attacked me on the bus. And I guess I don't know why I felt like if I got to know them and understand them, then they would somehow accept me and I would feel safe again, maybe. And so I got to meet these people and hang out with them. And they really weren't the people that I hung out. They really weren't nice people. And I'd grown up in a very, I guess, white privileged background in Australia, in Canberra. I wasn't exposed to much kind of cultural diversity or people from different backgrounds or socioeconomic status, and I certainly as a woman or a girl, I never felt disadvantaged or targeted in any way going to an all girls school. So I was really naive going into this, finding myself in this situation. And so, of course, I was very vulnerable and unfortunately got very influenced by these people and actually ended up starting to use drugs and get myself into some pretty bad situations. And not only that, it just kept spiraling in that I ended up leaving a really good relationship with a boyfriend I had at the time. I ended up leaving my job as a dancer so I could hang out with these people. Eventually, it really got to the stage I really think I hit rock bottom and woke up one day and just went, if I don't get myself out of this situation, I'm going to end up dead on the street in a gutter somewhere. So I thought the only way I can get out of this situation is to go back home, go to Australia. So I packed up all my stuff, shipped it to go back home. I booked my ticket. And strangely enough, only a week before I was about to leave, I was in a nightclub with a group of friends and I met someone. I met a man who was a very nice man, and I didn't know it at the time, but he actually ended up becoming my husband, and we're still married today after 35 years.
Wow.
We met, I got on the plane, went back to Australia. He left his job in France and came to join me in Australia. So it was a massive kind of turnaround of events. When I got back to Australia, I really wanted to straighten my life out and sort myself out. But I still had this real nagging question, trying to understand and make sense what had happened to me. I didn't feel healed in any way. I mean, I just got myself in a worse situation, really. And so I actually started volunteering with a lot of youth groups, with very diverse communities. I started volunteering in a women's shelter, a shelter for homeless women. And through those experiences, I started to really talk to people and got to know people. And so I could actually start to understand a little bit about their lives and their experiences, but in a much safer environment, of course, than what I had experienced. And so I think what is incredible to me when I think about this situation is that really, I think, is what has led me to doing the work that I do today around storytelling, and why storytelling to me is just so incredibly important for both the storytellers and the people listening to the stories. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What an incredible journey. And the turnaround was so quickly, right? You're prepared to leave, and then all of a sudden you just walk into this amazing opportunity. So that's a really quick shift, but just incredible. Good for you. I guess my question is, you even felt after that that you weren't healed, you weren't over it. And I think that's the thing about the word assault, right? When you're assaulted, whether it's physically, it leaves mental residue because you're assaulted both mentally and physically. And I think those mental wounds can be the ones that really stay with you because, like you said, the other things can heal, but it's what hangs on in your head. And so I understand the power of probably working with those people that you were volunteering with, the impact you had on them and the impact that it had on you. But is there anything specific that you started focusing on or doing differently? How did you move yourself through that healing process?
Yeah,
Better
it
word.
actually, I guess this all happened over several years. The event that took place, and then the initial healing, and then coming back to Australia, already that was probably over a couple of years.
Yeah.
Once I got back to Australia and I was volunteering, I think it was almost like really starting from scratch and trying to understand. And I think it made me question everything about myself and my own identity, how I behave towards others, what my own assumptions are, my beliefs, my family's beliefs, the environment that I grew up. So it was something that really just shifted my whole world and the whole
Yeah.
way that I saw the world, behaved in the world, and lived in the world. It just made me question everything. And so after I'd spent quite a bit of time volunteering, I decided I wanted to go to university and study to more formally to try and understand. And I did want to do social work, but I ended up studying business and obviously kept coming back because I went on and did my honours. It was actually in health services management. So still, I guess, heading back into the care side of things, and then a PhD in organisational behaviour. So very much looking at cultures, subcultures, behaviours, relationships between different groups of people within a business environment. But it also does look broader in terms of the societal and political, economic context of things.
Yeah.
And then after I finished my PhD and moved into the researcher, I actually ended up looking at social and emotional well-being. And that's what then led to the storytelling and looking at the benefits of storytelling. And that was over really an extended period, as well as having my own children and life and other things that happened during that time. But I think having a combination of academic insights and reading, understanding, looking at philosophical perspectives in a really deep kind of way, and always reflecting back, a very reflexive style of research. So I always think back, how does that relate to me? Then a lot of my experiences that happen, I also am really reflective and think, what was my part in that? Because I think, in terms of truth, that there are multiple truths because of different perspectives and people's different lived experiences. And there's not necessarily one truth that is more valid than another. It's a different experience. And I'm sure you would know that one event happens, but if you ask 10 people in the room that were involved in that event, they're all going to have a different recount or a different experience of that event. So that became really interesting to me, both formally as a researcher and personally in my own personal development, I guess, in my own relationships. So I don't know if that answered your question.
It did, for sure. I think it's very interesting that it's made you discover who you wanted to be and how I think it cracked you open, right? That's what I think sometimes these major events that kick our ass are meant to have you take a really hard look at like, who am I? Who do I want to be? What are these control programs I've been working under? What are these cultural programs I've been working under? You have to dissect all that and say, who am I now and who do I want to be and how am I going to pivot? And so I think that leads you into new places and spaces, right? So I totally think that was a great answer for the question. So now I have another one, which is, I think it's so curious that your response to the assault was to go be with people like that. Have you ever thought about why that was your sudden desire to leave these relationships where you felt safe and seen and whatever, I don't know how you would describe it, into this sort of more dangerous, that does not compute in my brain. Like, I understand being curious about it, but I'm like, wow, she just walked through that door. Do you have any insight now later about why that occurred for you?
It is something that I question myself still because I think it is, I don't know if it's an unusual response. I don't know if other people have responded to trauma. I mean, I'm sure they have. I can't be alone, but I don't know why I responded that way. Only that, and maybe this comes back to my research, whether it's a bit of a chicken and egg, is because of the way I researched my own curiosity in needing to, when you actually live an experience, that you have a deeper understanding of it. Now, I don't recommend that anybody that experiences trauma that you jump straight in and want to experience that firsthand. I wouldn't at all suggest that. And I think absolutely that the second approach, when I got back to Australia, to as in volunteering, talking with people, that actually gave me a better understanding of different perspectives, different attitudes, different beliefs than putting myself in a very dangerous situation where it was very destructive. So maybe it was a trauma response.
I agree with that. I think as I was completing the question, I was thinking, I think it pushed you into self-sabotaging behaviors, right? Because that's often what trauma can do, right? And we carry that with us. And suddenly it's like, why am I sabotaging myself in these ways? And you can probably draw it back to your past, your childhood, your upbringing. There's a million things that create these patterns of self-sabotage that we have. And so that's what I thought as I was asking the question is, oh, I can see why you would go from X to Y.
Yeah, and thinking that somehow I deserve to be in that situation. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, yeah. So,
and you also said you would hope that they would like you, recognize you, so it wouldn't happen again. So so that was like, when you said that, I was like, interesting, so fascinating. What we tell ourselves or what, Which also brings me to my next question about storytelling. With storytelling, I think there's a double-edged sword where we tell ourselves and we tell other people about our stories, but we stay stuck in them. right? We
Mm.
tell them because I don't want to say they're excuses. What's the word I'm looking for? We just tell them over and we stay in that sort of wounded space. But then there's the other side of storytelling, which is the side that you're really about, and I think it can be really powerful, is telling those stories as a way to heal and also have impact on others and inspire them to pivot the way that they're. So we're not the stories that we tell. We're not that trauma. But some people just tell the stories because they just don't know how to not stop talking about them, but they're not actually getting much out of it except supporting that side of the fence. And I think it's important that we shift that into we share stories because we want something good to come out of it. We want to help somebody who might be able to relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for me, with my experience with working with people in terms of storytelling, is sometimes we have an outward facing story that we feel safe for people to hear and that we feel safe to share. And I guess this is coming from a trauma informed approach that people need to feel safe to share information when they're ready to share it. But often we do get stuck in that and don't actually look deeper. And I think through the process that when I work with people in storytelling, especially those who have experienced some trauma, it's not at all a therapy session, but what it does is it allows people to actually dig a little bit deeper beyond that external facing story that they feel safe kind of behind. And often some things will start to come out or they'll start to make sense of things that they hadn't really necessarily resolved or realized that were maybe still unresolved within something. And as they start to unpack that, then that's where the healing can really start to take shape and allowing people. I think there's always that strengths based approach in that people do have inner strength. We don't need to solve other people's problems. We don't need to do things for other people. People have that inner strength inside them. It's about allowing them to space to tap into that and to realize actually the resilience and the power that they do hold within. And I think that's what can be a really empowering and a really transformative experience for them.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. I'm on my own path to regain my personal power and to stop giving it away and trying to. I'm like, that is not my lane. That is not my problem. I don't have to fix that. The only person that I need to concentrate is me and healing me and recognizing my worth, because that puts you in the position to understand where your power lies, and what's out of your control is none of your business. Right?
Right.
Because I think sometimes we default after trauma into being control, like we get really controlling about certain things because we think we can stop it.
Yep.
We anticipate our fears and then we're going to stop it. We're going to control all these factors. And so the more I heal, the more I'm like, I just release all the things I can't control. And I just stay in the lane of, what do I have? Where is my personal power in this moment? What are my options? I can stay and put up with this, or I can walk away. So there's a lot of beauty in what you said. So tell us what you do and how you help people, because you just mentioned that. And yes, I think people would be curious about that.
Yeah, the storytelling I've been doing, I guess, intentional storytelling, I would call it now, for
Mhm.
a few years. And I did some training in the US with an organization called Story Center, and they focus on digital storytelling. So that is because of course there's so many different ways to tell stories through so many creative ways, whether it's a written form, poetry, or a longer form life review, or a memoir, or but also through dance, through music, through art. There's so many different. And so this digital storytelling is one format that we use. And it's basically creating a short video of 2 to 4 minutes using narrative, images, and you can put music to it as well. But what it does is, because it's such a short format, because it basically boils down to 500 or 600 words, is that you really distill it down to the essence of a. So you get past the this happened on this date, that this happened, then this happened day. You actually get down to the essence of it, the meaning of it, of that experience. But generally, it will always finish with some kind of resolution. And sometimes the resolution may already be there, but sometimes it actually evolves as the storyteller goes through this process of creating the digital story. So that's one format, one methodology that I use, and I do that online through a workshop that goes through around 5 weeks, 2 hours a week, which is great because I can work with people all over the world because I'm based in France. It's great. And then another format that I use is I also do in-person storytelling events here in Nantes in France. So I've just started these, and they're actually in French, which is really interesting because the French, their language, the way they express themselves is just so beautiful and so poetic. But storytelling in this format is quite a new concept for them. They don't actually have a word for storytelling.
Wow.
With this meaning in their language. And so I've been working with some French people in designing the events. And they're like, no, there isn't a word. It's just, we're just calling it storytelling for women. So I work with women and we have live in-person events. So they're very small, very intimate. And we'll have 2 or 3 storytellers that will share a story around about 8 minutes of a meaningful experience, and we'll look at different themes around that. So there's those 2 formats, and then I'm actually running my first storytelling retreat in France this year in September, and that will be specifically with women 50 plus entrepreneurs. And I'm so excited about this event because not only is it going to have an individual storytelling component to it, so everybody will create their own digital storytelling, which is related to their business. So they could be entrepreneurs or coaches or women wanting to start their own business and really kind of connecting with their why. So it's way beyond any kind of marketing or storytelling in a corporate sense. It's a very personal story about their why. But there's also a collective piece. So I'll be working with all of the women during their retreat to actually create a participatory video, which is an advocacy piece, which is really advocating for women in business, amplifying voices, because I think women in business, especially later wanting to set up a business, there's all of the external constraints and barriers and challenges that we face, but there's also a lot of internal ones. So that collective piece will really look at some of the challenges and the barriers and issues that we're facing externally as well as internally, and how we can address some of those issues and come up with some collective solutions and resolutions, and amplifying that story to share with others and inspire other women who want to become entrepreneurs or already doing it. Yeah.
I love that. So how do you see that collective storytelling piece being put out in the world? Do you have a vision for what that looks like?
I think that's the beauty of having a video. So the collective piece will be a participatory video. We'll create a short video around it.
Yeah.
And what is so great about the video format is that it's so shareable. It's so easy to put online, and of course with consent and everything like that. And we create the video all the videos knowing that this will be in a public format. So people share and contribute in a way that they're comfortable with. But that video can be shared within small groups and then bigger groups and then bigger groups and bigger groups. And so those voices can be amplified. And I guess the hope is that more women will become inspired and will also start to create videos. And then the more
Mhm.
people that we can get involved in sharing women's voices in a positive, impactful way, then we can create change. We can
Yeah.
really build momentum, build the movement, and collectively link arms and push through,
Yeah.
make it better. Yeah.
I love that. And then with the individual videos, do you think these women will use them on their website or ways of marketing themselves and telling their own personal story? Because we always, doing the work that I do, I think the more personal and the more we can share about ourselves, obviously helps us become relatable, helps people want to work with us, get invested in us as humans. And I would imagine that is going to play a factor because I think the more we can show up in our humanity as real as we can be, that's how we're going to tamp down this AI obsession. It's all new and fancy and everybody wants to do the new thing, but ultimately AI doesn't have humanity behind it. And I think it's the way we're going to work our way around that. Everybody's so afraid of it. And I'm like, I'm not. People who want to be real and authentic, they're not going to stop wanting to be real and authentic. Of course, there's a whole another set of people, and I'm not concerned about those people. They
Right.
probably weren't somebody who was going to work with me before, so I'm not worried about that. But I think people are all up in arms about AI, and so I think the more humanity we can bring to the table is super
Oh,
important.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I
Yeah,
honestly think that, and especially coming out of COVID, where we were just all
yeah,
so isolated and locked away, and the only way we could communicate was virtually, which is great if you
yeah,
don't have that another option. But
right,
there's nothing better than human connection.
yeah,
And I agree with you in terms of people that either have a product or a service to offer others. When you can have that connection and people understand why you're doing that, which builds connection, it's emotional and it's
yeah,
strong. It's much more meaningful, and not everything has to be deep and meaningful and really dramatic and everything. But when it's
right,
something really personal, I think it is important, especially as you say, with AI, so much is becoming generic or
hmm,
standardized and everything. So anything that's human, authentic, I think is really going to stand out.
yeah, yeah.
Going,
It's so interesting because my why I've always said is my daughter. And because when she was young, I understood very clearly that I had to be the role model that she needed. And I have to show her a path that's accessible. And because I do believe the more you see people of your gender, ethnicity, whatever it is, in positions of power or positions of authority or positions where they're doing well financially, it gives us this idea that we can do that too, right? And so I think that's what brought me into fundamentally my mission is helping women because I think more than ever now, I think it's the decade, the century of the woman, and that we are building, we are linking arm in arm, and we are beginning to exercise personal control where we're not going to put up with it anymore.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that's women of all backgrounds, all cultures.
Yes.
And I think that just getting to know people and hanging out with people that are different from ourselves is
Hmm.
just so important. We can learn so much about
Yes.
others, but that enables us to learn about ourselves as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
more
It's
that
why I
we
love
can,
traveling and I love when people can travel because I'm like, the more you get outside of the United States, the more you're going to learn about it's important to learn about other cultures. It's important to learn how other people do things and just
mm,
not assume that we've got it all right. So I think, yeah, and to see the extremes that you see in other countries. There's some that are super impoverished, there's some that are super wealthy, and that exists in probably every culture. So I just think, yeah, the more you get outside of your own comfort zone and you meet people that don't look like you or think like you, or yeah, it can have a huge impact on people.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. and
Yeah.
society more broadly.
Yes, absolutely.
It's been great chatting with you, and thanks again for
Yeah.
being as a guest.
Oh, you're a great guest. I'm so excited. And I will put all your information about event in France because I know I want to go. And how many spots are there for that?
I've set a limit of 10. So it's a very small, intimate group. I really like working in small groups so that we
Yeah.
can work on a deeper level. And yeah, really 10 spots. There's already a few taken.
That's good. Awesome. We'll put that in there. So my last question is always, if there's 1 to 2 tidbits of information, advice you could give listeners, what would be your advice to help them move through difficult times?
Yeah, I really do think that connection with others is really important. And I think for women in particular, that having a sisterhood or a group of women or a network of women around you can really help if you're having some challenging times, questioning things. I just think that that's really helped me. And I was never really a girly girl or hang out with the girls and women's groups. And yeah, I was never like that at all. But the few times that I have been in challenging situations, and especially more recently, I've found that being connected with other women has been really helpful, really supportive. Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
never stop being curious and
Yes.
creative.
Yes. Yes. I think the creativity part you talked about earlier is so important, just to get you outside of your head, whether it's movement, whether it's painting or drawing or knitting or whatever it is, needlepoint. Do something that gets you out of your head and out of your cortisol cycles of stress.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Even needlework or something that's quite repetitive, knitting and everything. I think it's just, it almost gets you into a meditative
Yeah.
state where you just, I think
Yeah.
it's, yeah, incredibly
Yeah.
powerful.
My default's always music and dancing. So,
Oh, yeah,
because that's one thing you and I share. I'm like, just turn on the music. You'll feel better in 5 minutes.
absolutely. For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you. I
Oh,
appreciate
it's
you.
been a pleasure for me as well.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right. I will have all your information for our listeners, and I will see you hopefully soon.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.